and welcome to our info session, the info session of the Waipuna Halswell-Hornby-Riccarton Community Board. So welcome also to, we have a visitor. Hello. Yep. And then we also have on Zoom, we've got Debbie and Tyler.
Oh, and Andre's sister.
And Andre, just on time. So, right. So we will start out with any apologies. No,
Helen needs.
Helen
needs. We may be finished by then.
Hopefully we'll be finished.
Probably finished.
Joseph, he's running late, I suspect. Right. So we will have Gavin, head of Three Waters.
Yeah.
Three Waters program. Welcome, Gavin.
Thank you.
Do you know everybody around the table? We need to introduce. Right.
Oh, no.
We'll start with Helen.
Helen Broughton, hello.
Sarah Brunton from Hornby.
Yeah, Cody Cooper from Hornby.
Enjoy me.
One of these.
And we've got on Zoom, we've got Debbie from Halswell and Tyler Riccarton, Andre Halswell, and I'm Marie from Halswell as well.
Well, thank you for having me here today. So today I'm just going to give a high level overview of the Three Waters annual plan for FY27. It'll cover off the changes to the capital program and the change to our OPEX funding. So happy to take questions either through the presentation or at the end.
Click on the presentation thing. Yes, it should work now.
Yep. So I'll just go through this. Our capital program overall was sitting for next year at 390 million. That was not deliverable. That number is too high for us to deliver next year based on where we currently are. So it has been reduced down to 270, just under 274 million, which is easily achievable. At the moment, our forecasting is just over 300 million, so we'll easily achieve that 273. If you look at this one here, it shows you the spread of the proposed budgets for the next out to 2034 between level of service, meeting additional demand, and replace existing assets. So it's quite important to be clear that we have, in terms of replacing assets, we have ring fence that, but still we haven't reduced spend in asset renewals. And overall on the program, we haven't stopped any projects. We are just where we've required, we've rephased based on where the project is sitting and where we're looking to spend the money. I'm just going to that wastewater. Wastewater is reduced from 175 down to 135, and I'll show you in a couple of slides where that's gone down. But you can see, again, no project's been cancelled. The money's just been pushed out. Obviously, FY29, there's quite an increase in there. Projects such as Pakarara wastewater that's been deferred. We're supposed to be in construction now, but that won't be happening for a couple of years. Again, the split between the improvement level service renewals and made additional demand, you see renewals form the bulk of the spend. The key projects for next year is an activated sludge plant at Bromley, which is underway at the moment. It's obviously driving that as hard as we can to get that completed. Selwyn Street Pump Station, pressure main upgrade, that's to reduce wastewater overflows to the Heathcote. Grassmere Wetwater Storage, and that's mainly driven around growth and our renewals. It's important to know that the wastewater, that's a bulk. There's some major projects that are underway that are listed up there. So, you know, the activated sludge plant is a $100 million project. Selwyn is about probably 30 to 40 million. Grassmere's for about 30 million. So they are either in contract or about to be put into contract. So they'll be the point there is that they'll be underway. The advantage for us next year is that they're high spend projects, which means if those that look at our capital program from a spend point of view, yeah, well, we obviously have contracts in place, spend a lot of money. However, the risk that we have with these projects is 1 month delay can have a big impact to what we spend next year because they are high spend projects. It's just something we need to deal with. The main changes, the top 10 changes in terms of rephasing is shown up there. So I'll just pick out a couple, activated sludge plant, we've reduced the spend by 8 million, so we've let that contract out. We now know what the cash flow is from the contractor, so we've just matched their cash flow to our forecast, so therefore we've pushed out 8 million because we won't be spending that next year. The Northern Relief Anzac renewal, that's going through some private land, so we've got some private land holding that project up. The rest have been rephased due to we're looking to spend. One that was a new area was Riccarton Interceptor, so that's just been completed. That's coming about 4 million under budget. So while that's been pushed out, we won't be spending that money because that's a good story when we don't spend money because it comes under budget. Yes.
Another one of ours I see in there is Buchanan's Road, Mains.
I'm sorry. Yes, Buchanan's is finishing up. Yeah, that's completed. Yeah, so there will be that's finished. So there'll be no spending that next year apart from tidying up. And again, I think that came out of budget, so there's money going back to programs.
Cool.
That's another key point to point out is the last 2 years. I'll see around the country we're getting very good prices of contracts. So a lot of our contracts are coming in under budget. That creates another problem for us when traditionally that funding would be that we don't spend gets pushed forward to future years, which actually makes our job harder from a spending point of view. So end of this financial year, we're looking to not carry that funding forward, only carry forward what we for those projects still in play. So take, for example, Riccarton, the Riccarton Interceptor, that 4 million we wouldn't carry forward, that is just that'll go. Just a better way to deal with it.
Cody, want to ask a question about it?
No.
So yeah, on the water supplies. So the water supply, we are reducing from 112 million down to 78 million. Again, you see the funding pushed out to future years. Obviously, in the LTP process, we'll be obviously re-looking at all the spend to make sure it's lookable. Again, large focus on renewals, with ring fence renewals, heavily investing in water main renewals. And they're the key projects. The main project for water supply is water main renewals, which is about 48 million. Those other two are very minor compared. That takes the bulk of our work, and that's water renewals. We have it's an area for quite many years going forward. We'll be spending a lot in the water main space. I'm sure you know why. The top 10 projects for rephasing, a lot of those you see out there are pump stations. We'll rephase those based on when we believe we should bring those into construction. So Kerrs Road will be in construction next year, and then we'll start to every year after that rolling out another pump station. But obviously we don't want to dump those all onto the market at the same time because it'll get quite a result. Another one, Little Rail Tunnel, that's quite a large project. We've had some challenges with renewing the pipe in the Kiwi Rail Tunnel, so that's delayed that project. All the rest are reasonably minor, again, just rephasing. Stormwater flood protection, our most challenging activity to deliver often due to a lot of our assets are private property, so we always need to get access agreements in place. And also it's unusual for us to have consenting challenges in that area. So this is the biggest change from 101 million down to 60 million. This is a bit different to the others. You see there's a change here where the renewals form a lower percentage of, a lot of it is level of service. That's largely driven around stormwater treatment as a requirement from our comprehensive stormwater consent, but also in the flood protection space, particularly around the Avon River.
Just a quick one on that. So from a funding perspective, do you have enough funds available to respond to, more extreme weather events, particularly where we see like recurring events of sort of surface flooding?
So is that in terms of response or when an event occurs? We do, and obviously, in an extreme event, funding is not a limitation of responding. Yeah, so obviously we obviously worst case scenario, we're in a situation. We've used our budgets, but we still get funding from council to respond.
Thank you.
The key projects listed up there is Addington Brook, Riccarton drain filtration devices, which is in Hackley Park. Service flooding reduction program, which I'm sure you may have heard about. There was supposed to be 20 million next year to be spent, but there's no way we could start from a reasonably cold start and get 20 million construction underway. So we've done a lot of rephasing with that where we see the money being spent. But there are a number of projects in progress that was agreed with council. So I see the largest spend happening in about years 2 or 3 in that space. Once those projects ramp up again, being stormwater, it probably involves private property. So it's a long lead time to get those projects in construction. This is the main rephasing of projects. Obviously, the service flooding is the main one. The rest are reasonably minor rephasing, where we see the spend being. So happy to take questions on that. Three Waters OPEX. So we've had a reduction of 2.5 million in our FY27 budget. So we've worked around that to make sure that there's no change to the level of service that we deliver. I'm happy to take questions.
Right, I've got question from Mark.
Thank you. Thinking back to water supply, when you've got an area that's had a large number of main repairs, what's the trigger point to actually look at getting that programmed in for renewal of the main in that area?
So it's two parts of that. When we enter a new period of planning, say it's a long-term plan, for example, we look at all the mains across the city, and there'll be a threshold that we set. And so last time we did it would have been last year. It was if a main had more than 3 failures, that it would be put in the priority list. And there's also some other factors that, so if you've got a main that's, for example, outside of school, that'll be higher on a list than a cul-de-sac, for example. But the important thing to know that most people won't realise, and this has happened quite a few times, and we need to improve how we do it, is you may have a street that is quite long. There may be actually 8 pipe assets within that street. So we look at the pipe asset, not the street. So if you understand what I mean there, so actually in your street you might see 7 failures. There's a risk that it's not triggering for a renewal because we're looking at the asset.
Yep.
Makes sense.
So we do need to improve in that space. But obviously we have a large city and a lot of assets. And there's plenty of times when we do accelerate, it's a pipe that's not on our list has come up, that there's been a number of failures, and we will bring that in and get that done in the financial year that we sit in.
Yep. Is it worth us flicking a query through to you directly on that to sort of nominate a street that we've noticed a number of failures?
Yeah, and certainly, and we always welcome those, because it's happened a few times it's come through and we've looked at it, and it hasn't been picked up on our, the way we do it through algorithms and all that hasn't been picked up in that space. So more than happy to take that on board. And
very good.
Yeah, and it's it's not unusual. What is unusual where you have essentially a water main will go, have a leak, a burst, say in 1 month, and it's been very good up to that point, but then in the next 6 months, it's had another 3 rapid.
Just
the nature of some of these assets.
Very good. Thank you.
Oh, good. Hang on. I've got Helen and then Cody.
Yes, I've got first a Riccarton issue. You talked about a Riccarton interceptor. Where's that going to go?
Well, that's been installed. That's finished now.
It's finished.
Yeah. That was the one that went down past the university.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of, we've got a lot more intensification plan for Riccarton than expected, if you like.
Yes.
So is it going to cope? Is this going to cope if you get not every section, every second section is medium or high rise?
The planning teams have looked at intensification, and that's one of the main drivers for the Riccarton interceptor.
I understand that. But it's gone beyond what council saw at one stage.
I'd have to go back and look. We'd have to go
Okay.
back. So obviously our planners take they provide information from a growth perspective.
Yes.
And so they'll select take the record sector, they'll select the size of it, but it can always actually take a lot more than what we allow for. It's just the nature of blocks, how we do it, but there's always a limit.
Okay, I'll send something through to you actually.
Yeah.
Now, two other issues which don't concern our ward. The Heathcote River, I was surprised to see it flooded because I thought it had been fixed. I was on council till 2013 and I thought in that intervening period, the council had actually stored up the Heathcote, but it seemed to have burst its banks again.
Yeah, and I'm still to get a good debrief on what occurred, but I mean, we do know the roads flooded, and the roads will flood during certain events, and we accept that. But obviously, the key is that there's no risk to floor levels.
Okay.
I'm unaware of any houses being flooded in Christchurch, but obviously we're yet to have our debrief because I mean our teams are still in recovery.
And the other issue is Banks Peninsula. For 2 seasons, it was you couldn't swim there. This season, you seem to be able to swim, and then there was a sudden problem. So has it been fixed overall?
Is this over in Governor's Bay, Littleton?
Corsair Bay and Cass Bay.
Yeah, so there's a series of events that were probably worst time out to say is so Corsair Bay was a parks have a toilet facility there, and there was an incident on the toilet facility septic tank.
That's right.
Yeah, Corsair was at Cass.
So has
What in Cass Bay? Yeah,
Cass
Cass
Bay,
Bay, yeah.
So has it been fixed overall, other than some other mishap?
I don't know. So it's not Three Waters assets, but I do know we provided staff to parks to help them
To fix it.
plan to fix.
And it got fixed, didn't it?
It is fixed,
Yes.
but obviously the question is is there something in place to stop happening again? I can't answer that. The other incidents, there's an instance over in Diamond Harbour. We had a water main
That's right.
burst,
Yes.
and it took out a wastewater main, unfortunately. So all I can say is we will have water mains burst, and I couldn't think of a worse time or place for it to occur. But yeah, obviously our renewals program is to reduce the risk of that happening. It won't remove the risk of happening.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Helen. Cody.
Thank you. With the rephasing, that's great. Am I right in understanding that you focus on what's deliverable, so we will not, borrow or take as much from rates in advance of when we can actually deliver those? Is that the intent, is to reduce how much we take in rates?
Yeah, they see that is certainly the drive around so we have a deliverable program. So obviously if we have a higher program, then the rates they put out there will be intended to pay that debt. And obviously if we don't spend it, I mean essentially what have been rated for debt we haven't taken on.
Correct. Yeah.
That's essential. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? No? All right. Thank you, Gavin.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Next topic, we've got Amy's RTS Springs Road intersection improvement options, including the minimum option. Katie, welcome, Katie. And
hello, I've also got, hi, I'm Katie Smith, I'm the project manager for this project, and I've also got Wendy with me. She is our senior traffic engineer on this. So what I'll do is I'll go through a quick potted history for those of you who might not know about this project, because it's been going on for a little while. So back in August 2024, we had 3 options proposed that were presented to the board, and at that point the board confirmed. Actually, I'm sorry.
is it on?
Okay.
No, that's not the right one. Am I going the wrong way? That's it. No, this is the engagement result.
Wrong slide.
The wrong slide.
Which slide do you want? Sorry, the wrong
Oh.
as a presentation.
Wrong presentation. Okay. That the. Oh, well, I'll speak to it then. As I say, we originally came along with 3 different options. One of which, option 1, was to signalise both the Amy's and the Springs Road intersections with Springs Road. We had a briefing with the community board and we provided the schemes and the cost estimates at that point in time. That was in February 2025. And we spoke about, engaging with the community, and the board actually agreed that we should take early sort of engagement with the community to find out what they felt they considered the issues to be. So the community considered the main issues to be the right turns at this point. They saw them as very dangerous, and there was a need for better pedestrian and cycle safety. And also they felt there were issues with congestion. So we had actually at that point 400 responses, and the majority supported signals at both intersections, and they wanted to see something done. So after that, we talked to the community board about what options there would be, and that included banning right turns. Yes, thank you. That included banning right turns, installing mini roundabouts, or looking at a do minimum signalised intersection. So that was just the minimum works we could actually do to get the signals in, but without all the extra bits and things. So that's what we've gone off and looked at. We've looked at the do minimum options to signalise both intersections, and this presentation is to just look at those 2. The original option 1, which was to do both signalised intersections with all the road asset renewals, and then this option is to do both signalise both intersections, but with minimal upgrades of the road assets. So this is the do minimum option. I'll go through all the differences between this one and this one, which was the original option 1, which we included the renewal of the road assets. So the main changes the main differences between the 2 are that with the do minimum option, you would have limited curb and channel renewal. As you probably know, in between these 2 intersections, there are the old dish channels. So it wouldn't be doing those, whereas with option 1, we would remove all the old dish channel, put in new dish channel. There would also be some berms on the north side of the Springs Road as well. We would have limited footpath renewal instead of full footpath renewal. There would be no carriageway renewal instead of full carriageway renewal. We would be undergrounding the overhead power lines on both options because it needs to be done for safety reasons and the signal reasons. There would be no new road landscaping on the do minimum option, but there would be on the northwest side of Springs under the full option. And we would have limited improvements to cycle infrastructure, whereas on the option 1, there would be a separation of cyclists at the intersections. So obviously the differences will result in different cost estimates between the 2 options. So the minimum option would cost approximately, and these are estimates, 3.5 million. And as we came back to you before, option 1 would be approximately 6 million.
Can I ask a question? There's an option 2 in there. What happens if you take option 1 and do a signal at and just go with a signal at 1 intersection?
Yes, that was an option that was put to the community board before.
Thank you.
Yes.
We were just going to signalise the Awatea and Springs
That's
Road
right, yes.
intersection. So there was that, but when we came back to the board and you asked us to we gave costings for that.
Oh, okay.
But when we came back to the board and they asked us to look at the do minimum, I thought that, you know, the main comparison here really is between the one option to do both with everything renewed and the do minimum
Okay.
option with.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So do we have traffic lights at both intersections under option 1?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, and-
And
Both of them.
Yeah.
so the main difference between the options is one option will renew the road asset
That's right.
and
Yes.
one option won't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the thing is, we've looked at the roading asset renewals, and some of them are actually close to their end of life, and there are issues with what's under the ground here as well. There's some research that's been done looking at deflection, etc. So this just sets out where the assets are in poor condition, such as east of Amy's Road, the road is past its asset life with high deflection and curvature, which shows there could be possible issues. It's not on the current programme for renewal. Awatea Road, although not old, has high curvature and deflection, likely due to heavy traffic, and will need to be monitored for premature failure. The footpaths in the area are in poor to very poor condition. The curb and channel, although it's old, it is actually in average to good condition, and may only require maintenance. We've also looked at if we did the do minimum option without the asset renewals, and if we did the asset renewals at a later date, we would probably have to redo some of the work as part of that option, which could involve moving the traffic signal poles and changes to the stormwater and curb and channel. We've also done a costing to see if we were to do the asset renewals at a later date, what they would cost to be. So they would be 3.1 million at the end of the day. So that would take the option 1, which we had 6 million for, would actually, if you did it in 2 parts, would end up being about 6.6 million. So it would cost more. So this is our current budget availability that we have in the project and the programme at the moment, just under 1.5 million. We've taken this and we've discussed this with transport management, and what we're going to do is investigate the availability of operational budgets for the road asset renewals, so that they could be undertaken at the same time as the traffic signals and the undergrounding of the overhead power lines. And so we can do this as a one-pass approach. However, the community board will still need to advocate in the LTP as a priority project for an additional 2 million. So that takes the 1.5 that we've got in the budget at the moment, plus another 2. That would take it up to the 3.5 to cover the costs for the do minimum option. Then transport staff will have to look to see if we can find the additional 2.5 million for the new footpaths, curb and channel, etc.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee on that, but that way, by I suppose pooling both of those two sums, those amounts, we can get to the 6 million to do the project in one go. Well, I think we all know that there's clear benefits of renewing the roading assets at the same time as signalising the options rather than going back. So what we're suggesting is that we will go and continue with the detailed design process whilst awaiting budget confirmation. And obviously you'll be looking through the LTP process if this is a priority for you to seek that extra 2 million for that. We do know that there will be a slight delay on Springs Road by putting in 2 intersections, but with traffic modelling of the intersection timing of the lights that shouldn't be too much of an issue, but it will make the intersections safe. Is there anything I forgot?
All good? Are you happy to take questions now?
Yes.
All right, I've got Cody and then Mark. Cody, please.
Thank you. I was just going through there recently, just to note that some of the footpaths along Springs Road have been renewed. It's certainly not all of them, but it's worthwhile noting. Just some questions, and you may not be able to answer these, but it'd be good to get some input on it. This area is kind of tagged for medium and sort of more high density housing. Have you explored any alternative sort of funding tools, like around maybe targeted rate or some sort of development levy or something for this area to fund this project? I mean, it's arguably only required because of growth.
Not that I know of. No, I don't know. Matt, no. So Matt Goldring here is team leader for traffic operations. But no, I don't know. I think targeted rates have been questioned before elsewhere for other projects. But not that I know of that it could be used in this instance.
Okay. And just thinking about the work that was done at Church Corner, there seems to be a lot more expensive for, I guess, value for money, you might say. Do we know why that is? I mean, I understand that we're doing 2 sets of intersections, but it doesn't, to me, seem to be that different.
This question was asked actually a while ago, and we did have on a previous thing to show what the differences were. So one of our engineers who did all the costings actually gave me a list, and it's probably somewhere in here. But there actually was quite a few differences that weren't sort of as visual, and part of that is to do with the renewal of the assets here, like the curbing, the carriageway. And we know from I think it's called a deflectometer assessment that it's probably quite bad underneath the road here, whereas Church Corner, although we've got the new traffic, the signals and things, there wasn't actually a lot of work that needed to be done to the curbs and the roading.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's where a lot of the costs come from.
Right, thank you, Cody. I've got Mark and then Sarah and Helen.
So we know that Amy's Road is up for renewal.
Yes.
There's a project on budget for that. Is this likely to be dovetailed with that, and can sort of budget be moved around from that other renewal to help sort of do some of this?
Yeah, I spoke to the project manager for that project earlier today. Obviously, it all depends on when we might be able to get, or the community board might be able to get the budget. But once the budget is in the programme, then yes, money can be moved backwards and forwards so that not necessarily dig up the whole thing in one go, but as you say, you follow on from one project to another.
There's little sense in doing this without doing some of that.
No, yeah. But, I mean, I can't promise that, but if the budget comes along, then we could look at the programming.
I've been asking repeated questions in the annual plan process, which we're about to go out for consultation on, as to whether it's worth our board lobbying to get budget added to next year's annual plan to keep this project moving through the next financial year. I've had assurances that we don't need to because there's enough budget there to work with through the next financial year, but are you sort of comfortable there's enough already on budget to keep moving through the next year, 12 months?
So for the next year to do the detailed design, my estimate, and I think Matt would back me up on this, that there's sufficient budget there to get through the detailed design. We wouldn't be into construction within that time period, and we'd need the larger amount for the actual construction. So if we carry on the detailed design, by the time we're into the LTP process and the money's hopefully secured, then we'll have enough money to then do that. At the moment, it's the programme money is sitting at FY 29 and 30, but it can always be
pulled back. Yeah. And I guess with that, do we have any sort of feel and confidence that should we put in a bid around the LTP that we're likely to be successcul? I mean, it's probably just crystal ball gazing about then, but
I don't know. I don't do the LTP.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, looking at your 2 options there, I mean, wisdom says, look, do it once, do it right. So doing the minimum, whilst it looks palatable at 3.5 versus 6 mil, it's a tough call to go one way or the other. I mean, main thing is we want to get the lights in there. These intersections really have come about and they've become needed because of the extreme growth we've had in Wigram Skies and Awatere and Halswell and all shopping in Hornby. So kind of overdue. So is there development contributions already tagged for this?
Not that I know of.
Right.
No. Again, it's a bit like the targeted rate. As far as I know, they go into the bigger pot as part of the LTP, and then that's where it's decided where projects. So it's, I believe, up to the community board if this is your priority to ensure that when it comes to the LTP process, that this is one of your top ones to look for the budget. I suppose in one sense the thing is you're only needing to look for another 2 in this instance, whereas before you were needing to look for another 4.5. But as I say, we still need to find that budget, the other budget within the
renewals
or the operational renewals.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mark?
Nope, that's good.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I've got Sarah and then Helen. Go ahead, Sarah.
So with the modelling, I assume, would there be further modelling done when it comes to detailed design? Or is the modelling that you've done now giving you a good idea of what's required at this stage?
Yes, I believe it's given us a good idea that it won't cause massive issues if we signalise both of these intersections.
Yes.
So it's just delay. There will be some delays on Springs Road because at the moment it flows. But part of that is the problem is because it just flows over a long stretch of road, people find it very difficult to actually turn right. And I think from the consultation or the early engagement that we had, I should say, that people commented that they will go a fairly long way out of sort of like this area, so they don't have to turn right because it's quite stressful.
I just noticed like early in the mornings, traffic backs up all the way down back from main South Road, all the way down to where these proposed crossings are. And my understanding is that because of the Sockburn roundabout is a massive bottleneck and that comes all the way back. And yes, I agree that absolutely this is required for these intersections, but I'm just wondering about the bigger impact of having more traffic, trying to get in, being further backed up, and how the lights will actually work at those times where it's so congested. And because it probably is a good half hour, I'd say, in the mornings, maybe. I mean, I haven't been there and observed myself, but yeah, I'm just wary about that impact.
Goes back to the highway as well, the other direction.
The roundabout.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
No, towards the southern motorway.
Yeah, that's what I mean, the Halswell roundabout.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, just something to be aware of, I guess. Yeah.
Be something for traffic operations to try and manage.
Do we know, like, with Sockburn roundabout, what's happening there? I don't.
MRT.
I don't know if there's anything.
That's probably the bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Right. Okay, thank you, Sarah. Get Helen and then Mark again.
Yes, this is really a question for councillors, but this is coming from growth in Hornby and Halswell. Is there not probably a question for Mark too. Can we not argue this when you set development contributions? Because it seems that we've got the growth and Hornby and Halswell have subdivision growth as well as intensification. Can we not get money from that?
That's what I would have expected we would have done through.
It just seems that this has come from growth.
This seems to me like something's been overlooked through that growth phase where they should have been getting contributions for this from
at the time
they
construct. And it seems to me the private developers, the money that they hand in should be for this area. Yeah, so you agree it's just a matter of doing it as around the table.
Right. Mark.
So my last question is, as well as the detailed design, is there further consultation to be done sort of over the coming 12 months or so with the community as to, their thoughts and preferences around this, or is the consultation that has been done sufficient?
It's just pre-engagement, isn't it?
It was just pre-engagement. So the process is that we've had the scheme options, but we haven't actually gone out to the community and said, this is what we're going to go and progress with. So we would still need to do that.
Yeah.
So I think what we'd do is we would come back to you with the option 1A, which was, and that did have sub options as well about additional speed, calming. So we'd probably bring that back to the board, and then
No speed humps.
well, with those options, and then following comment back from the board, we would go out for consultation, and then we'll come back to you. And if you approve that following consultation, then we do the detailed design. So yes, we've got to do a few more steps before we do the detailed design. And given that, by the time, you know, we've been back and forth to the board and to the community, as I say, and then the detailed design,
The LTP will be upon.
we wouldn't be ready to construct straight away. So when you were talking earlier about having the money as soon as possible, we don't need it as soon as possible.
Cool.
Yeah, we've got enough.
So pretty well covered through this AP season towards the LTP. LTP will be the time we absolutely need it.
That's how I'd see it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. One last question, I suppose. There's two more questions, Joseph and then Cody.
So you mentioned a part of the road that is not at end of life, but appeared to be degrading potentially due to heavy traffic. What do you estimate to be the sources of the heavy traffic, and could it be growing further? And what would be the impacts of the heavy traffic on these works,
So
or rather on assets being used by these
yes,
works?
So as far as I understand, the bit that's is the top of Awatea Road. Right?
Yeah.
Awatea Road. It's just a lot of heavy traffic going through there at the moment and turning.
And it's also pass through as well.
And are they electric buses? I don't know, but
maybe
electric
but
buses
it's a
are heavier.
bus.
So if the road if these assets are renewed, then they would be renewed to a standard that would be better than what we've got there at the moment. So therefore they should last. I would say all roads will need renewing at some point. But these.
Anything else, Joseph?
Was that?
I guess just a quick follow-up question. Would you say that most of that is coming from within the Christchurch city territory?
The traffic.
Yeah. This one.
Well, I believe from
Yeah.
what people have said here today is that the majority of the traffic is local traffic coming from the Southwest Growth area, which is still within Christchurch boundary.
As opposed to Springs Road, which is a lot of Selwyn traffic
Oh, is it?
coming in.
Yeah.
Out of Prebbleton to Lincoln.
Can I just make a comment?
Hang on, we've got one more question, Cody, and then I'll have you.
Thank you. I won't keep you too long, and thank you for bringing this to us. Very good to see that we have some different options. One thing I was wondering was the do minimum that you've given us, if we split that in half, 1.5 million roughly, it's almost enough to do one on do minimum, one intersection. Yeah.
So one of the earlier presentations, when we were asked to do looking at doing Awatea Road and then come back and do Amy's Road. Again, by staggering it, the cost was an extra, I think it was 400,000 at that point.
Wow.
So it very much is, yes, because things like traffic management, you know, there's lots of costs, etc., which are involved in projects. So at that point, it was considered it's best to go and look at a do minimum, not do one and then the other, because those it's a bit like then, as I say, doing the minimum and then coming back and doing the road renewal assets. That's going to cost an estimated 600,000. So that was why one do it once and do it all in one go. If we can both find the money.
That makes sense to me. I guess I'm just thinking in terms of consultation, if we had to do the absolute minimum, let's say that it was the Amy's Road intersection, for example, you know, and we'd be able to say to residents, this is a 0.2% rates increase, it'll be, I don't know, $5 a week or something, versus maybe it's quite a lot more potentially for residents, just in terms of giving them an understanding of what, you know, the actual cost difference is for them. So ultimately I am a ratepayer, but I'm not, I want people to be informed if we're making this decision, because they might change their mind in terms of doing both if they're going, maybe I actually could live without it. I'm just thinking when we consult on what option that we take.
So would the community board like us to come back then with the
Do
minimum for both? And then just one?
Even think so?
No, so.
Even for Amy's rate?
It doesn't say you were just going to be coming back with the,
So at the moment we'll be coming back with the original option
So-
1, which is to do everything with the road renewals. And that will be dependent on the community board being successful getting money in the LTP
The 2 million.
and
Which we will.
staff being successful in finding enough budget for the renewals to happen at the same time.
We'll work through that.
for the sake of 2.5 million.
Cool, thank you, we can do
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, okay, so Helen,
Yes, it's just a comment. It's likely that we'll merge with Selwyn and Waimakariri, I would think. So this is a Selwyn issue too. So there's an extra, that's an argument which can be used, I think.
Mm.
There's a lot of traffic from Selwyn who are now going to be part of Greater Christchurch. I presume.
I like your crystal ball.
Well, I think it's going to happen.
no, not agree, right?
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks.
It will happen in 2 years, actually.
Okay.
The draft.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a lot of things for that.
I think it will happen in 2 years.
Right.
At least the draft outline.
Well, a little bit, I think.
Okay, next week,
I think I actually support.
Thank you.
bylaws, Tina?
Gina.
Who's not
Gina?
here. Adam, Philip and Jenna.
We're splitting some of the team to do different community boards, so some will go to some and others will go to others.
Cool.
Right, welcome, Philip and Jenna.
Right. Kia ora koutou. I'm Jenna Marsden and this is Philip Henderson. We're both from the policy team. Our team looks after bylaws. So we lead the development and review of all of council's bylaws, as well as any amendments to those and general bylaws advice. Near the start of every term, someone from our team will come around community boards and give this presentation or a very similar one. And it's really designed to be a bit of a bylaws 101 for any community board members or a bit of a refresher for the community board members. So first up, I'll take you through an overview of what bylaws are and what bylaws you can expect to see reviewed over the next few years. And then I'll hand over to Philip, who'll give a more detailed overview of the alcohol restrictions in public places bylaw. This is one of our reviews currently underway and one that does tend to attract significant public and community interest. Right, I just have to learn how to drive them.
It's not an easy one.
Where I'm pointing at the moment.
Well, look here.
Thank you.
Maybe this one.
Nope.
Mouse is not working either.
Wants to go.
Frozen.
Oh, yeah.
I may have seen it.
Oh,
Oh, there we go. No.
Is that
Yeah.
good?
Oh, backwards now.
That makes it work.
So bylaws are local laws made by council that only apply within the boundaries of the TA where they're made. Bylaws can also only apply to specific parts of the district, and you'll see that in ones like our alcohol restrictions, which Philip will talk about later. So bylaws require actions of others or they prohibit certain actions, and they're a regulatory tool which allows the council to take enforcement action if someone's failing to comply. Generally speaking, they are for the purposes of managing activities and use of council land, assets and infrastructure, really in order to protect those or mitigate any negative impacts. So the important thing there is the focus really is on public places and assets, things like roads and pipes, and not on managing private property. I say that, and there are a few exceptions. So where we think about the interface between public and private, we do have some role where actions on private property will have implications for public services. And a really good example of that is your wastewater drains at home. If you're putting something down that's going to go into the public wastewater system and cause a blockage or damage to the public system, then that's something a bylaw can control. And on the odd occasion, we also have some specific bylaw making powers for managing things on private property. And an example of that would be brothel signage, which could be on a private property, but it's visible from the public. So legislation dictates the type of bylaws we can make, and we do need legislative powers to make bylaws on any given matter. We will often use the Local Government Act that has both general bylaw making powers and some very specific ones targeted at council functions like waste management or trading in public places. And then there are also a range of subject specific acts that we use. So we currently have bylaws made under the Dog Control Act, Freedom Camping Act, Prostitution Reform Act, Land Transport Act, Burial and Cremation Act, Reserves Act, and the Waste Minimisation Act. And I think I've probably forgotten one as well. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach for bylaws, both in terms of what they can regulate and also how we can enforce them. It really depends on the act that that bylaw is made under. In some cases, infringements or instant fines are available. However, that only applies where there is legislation to enable that. A few of our bylaws do have instant fines available, likes of dog control, freedom camping, and parking, but many don't. The avenue of prosecution in the district court with a fine on conviction is available. Usually that's up to $20,000 for most bylaws made under the Local Government Act. But again, the relevant legislation dictates what that maximum penalty is. However, prosecution is reserved for the very serious breaches, so it's not something that we pursue very often. And then there are some other actions under legislation we can use as well. So, for example, under the Local Government Act, we could serve an injunction compelling someone to cease an activity. We can recover costs for damage arising from a breach of bylaw, and there are many others as well. There's just a couple of examples. So all that being said, though, the first approach to enforcement is always education or communication. Make sure people understand what's required of them under a bylaw and seek voluntary compliance. And it's only where that doesn't lead to a remedy that we would look at those other options we have available. So we have 16 bylaws made under 8 different statutes, and that is all of them there. You can find all of those on Council's website. And that list kind of really demonstrates the breadth of matters that bylaws that we do have relate to. So it's a mixture of protection of council assets, use of council infrastructure, and then there are some that are more related to behaviour in public places. A couple on that list are ones that we must have, so there's dog control and traffic and parking. And a lot of the others are just we may have if that's how we choose to regulate those things. Most of the time, enforcement for the bylaws does sit with the council and the unit that is responsible. So, for example, the animal management team look after the enforcement for the dog control bylaw. We've got the parking enforcement team for the parking parks, the traffic and parking bylaw. But there are a couple of cases where enforcement is done by someone else. So for alcohol restrictions in public places, that one can only be enforced by police. And same for any moving vehicle offences, they can only be enforced by police. So that's the likes of our cruising and prohibited times on roads. Some of you might know that more commonly as like our boy racer bylaw. And then the other one is freedom camping bylaw. We actually have a contractor that monitors and enforces that bylaw on our behalf. So the relevant legislation sets the scope of what we can manage via a bylaw. the process we must use to make or review a bylaw, and also how often bylaws must be reviewed. When we make a bylaw, we are making secondary legislation, and a thorough and considered process is required. So it includes tests and considerations that encourage good lawmaking and to ensure that the bylaw is robust and reasonable. So as part of that, we need to make sure that the problems are clearly defined and evidenced, that the bylaws must be within the powers of the law and they're not repugnant, uncertain, or unreasonable. And the process includes some specific assessments under Section 155 of the Local Government Act. So that's just in that wee green box there. We need to ensure that the bylaw is the most appropriate way to address the problem. And that also includes looking at other options. So for example, whether an educative approach would be better. The bylaw also needs to be in the most appropriate form. So that really relates to the drafting. Is it clear? Is it certain? Is it enforceable? And then we also have to do an assessment on any implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. Any limitations on freedoms must be reasonable and justified. And a common one that pops up for us there in relation to bylaws is around the freedom of movement. So that's just one we need to pay close attention to when we're making bylaws. Legal challenge is a very real risk for bylaws if the process and considerations aren't sufficiently considered. And bylaws can be challenged under the Bylaws Act 1910 or the Local Government Act on the grounds that the bylaw is invalid, unreasonable, or enacted through a flawed process. So bylaws are required by law to be reviewed every 10 years, and that's within 10 years of its adoption date. It does need to be within 5 years if it's a new bylaw, and then every 10 years subsequently. Our team maintains a 10-year review timetable to schedule these reviews, and that's really to help spread the workload and also make sure they fit in with council terms, elections, LTP cycles, things like that. That said, bylaws can be amended at any time outside of that schedule, as long as the review is following that process set out in the Act. So there we can split up our review process into 3 stages there. So stage 1 is the internal council process. So that includes reviewing the current bylaw provisions, whether they're still relevant, and identifying any new issues, considering options and gathering evidence to prepare a draft proposal. We prepare quite a substantial report package, and that includes a clause-by-clause analysis and a Section 155 report. And then stage 2 is really the external or consultation phase. And this is where the reports will go to the Policy and Planning Committee of Council. That's a committee of the whole, and so they will be making the decision to adopt and go out for public consultation on bylaws. Consultation can be either a special consultative procedure or Section 82, but usually for bylaws, regardless of which path it goes, the consultation procedure looks very, very similar. A hearings panel is always convened to hear and consider all submissions and then prepare recommendations for the council on the final form of bylaw. So then stage 3 is the decision and any implementation that's required. The hearings panel will send their report to council for consideration, and bylaws can only be adopted by full council, so that power cannot be delegated to the committee. That whole process usually takes around 12 to 18 months, with the last 6 months being the consultation and hearings process. And then in terms of where community boards come in and contribute to this process, so we're really keen to hear local views from our community boards in that process, and there are always opportunities for input in both the internal and external phases of each bylaw review. So our team will always be in touch with each community board when a review is underway, and we'll seek early input in the internal phase. How we do this does vary depending on the bylaw and level of likely interest, but usually it would include a memo or a briefing and opportunities for written or verbal feedback. And then in addition to that as well, we also seek formal feedback from the board through the formal consultation process as well. So we really encourage you to get involved with that process. Right, so bylaws for review this term. We have 11 of our 16 bylaws that must be reviewed by October 2028, which is an extraordinary amount. All 11 are legislatively required reviews, some because they are nearing their 10-year review mark, and others because there have been changes in legislation which has triggered a review. So 8 of those, sort of the first 8 listed on the slide, are already underway and in the early stages. I will skip over alcohol restrictions because Philip's going to cover that one. But the next blue box there, we've got our 3 water service bylaws. We've got trade waste, stormwater and land drainage, and water supply and wastewater. These 3 are a significant new addition to the review timetable for this term. And this is because new legislation for local water done well requires that all water service bylaws are reviewed for consistency with the new Local Government Water Services Act. It's a 2-step process, which is a little bit different to our normal review process. And it requires a consistency assessment, which must be completed by August 2027. And then if we identify we need to make changes through that process, we have until August 2030 to then make those changes to the bylaw. We do anticipate that there will be some changes to those bylaws because it is likely we're going to want to take advantage of some new infringement provisions that the new legislation has given us. Traffic and parking and stock on roads. The reviews for these 2 are kicking off and they have some crossovers, so are being reviewed together. The traffic and parking bylaw is a functional one. So as a road controlling authority, we must have this bylaw to enable us to regulate certain things, including determining one-way roads, prohibiting certain movements like U-turns and special vehicle lanes. And then stock on roads is more rural focus, regulating the movement of stock across or along roads. A review of the general bylaw is also underway, and this bylaw contains administrative clauses that apply to all other bylaws. We anticipate very low interest in this one and minimal changes, but it is still an important one nonetheless. And then our marine, river and lake facilities bylaw review is also underway, and this one regulates the use of council structures that provide access to water, such as jetties and boat ramps, to ensure fair and safe access and also to protect them from damage. So this one will be of particular interest more for the likes of Banks Peninsula Community Board and coastal communities, as well as places like the Gorans and our lakes like Lake Rua. The final 3 on that slide there, brothels, public places and cemeteries, they are all scheduled for later in the term, and we haven't started those ones yet. We're getting through the first 8. So our team will come back to community boards on each of these as the reviews progress with more information on the purpose, the proposed changes and opportunities for input. So if there's any in that list that you would like to flag to us of particular interest, do let us know and we can make sure we do a little bit more of an involved process in terms of coming to speak to you in person. But really the key message is we have a much heavier than usual bylaw review program in front of us this term, and it does severely limit council's capacity to undertake any out of cycle bylaw review work or amendments. So next I will hand over to Philip to talk about the alcohol restrictions in public places, but just before I do.
Yeah, I just want to check with you. Did you want questions for you now before we go to Philip?
I'm happy to do it that way if you'd rather. Yeah, I can.
Or do you members want to wait until Philip finishes?
I've got quite a quick question.
Yeah, because I have a few people here who have questions. We'll do it now before we go to Philip. So we've got Cody, Mark, and then Helen. Cody, please.
Thanks. some of the issues I've heard raised from residents is particularly around the bylaws, for whatever reason, are not really enforceable, like the brothels bylaw, for example. From what I understand, someone can say, I went in there and I picked up, a trade meat purchase, and be in there for 20 minutes. And then there's basically no way of actually enforcing that. How are we working towards sort of eliminating some of those loopholes?
So yes, one of the issues we have is a lot of them don't have infringement offences. There is some work underway with the Department of Internal Affairs at the moment, having a look at how bylaws can be enforced. So I think nationally there's some work to try and give bylaws a bit more teeth in the future.
Okay. And I guess in terms of transport as well, a common one that I hear is outside of hours, like business hours. There's not really much in the way of enforcement. Is it more of a funding issue? The team's not resourced for that, or?
I'm not quite sure on that one, but is this more about parking enforcement?
Sure.
Yeah. We are aware of that particular issue. I'm not handling that review myself, but I can definitely pass that on. Whether that is strictly for the bylaw or more of a issue with the Act and enforcement, I'm not sure, but I can definitely pass that on to my colleague that's working on that one.
Okay, thank you. And I guess we'll get a chance to have our say around the public places bylaw. I guess I'm thinking in terms of, street food vendors, for example. I can't go and set up something on not maybe this street, but like a side street, for example. It's largely prohibited. We would be able to have our say through that review process.
Yes, we will. We don't have timeframes for that one yet, but yes, definitely.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Cody. I've got Mark and then Helen.
I think mine pretty much got answered, but the trade waste bylaw that was only passed last year.
I know. Yeah, we needed to review that one when we did, because it was already up against its 10-year time frame, and then we do have to review. The good news is it should be in good shape. So that one, I don't want to speak too soon, but I think content-wise would be okay. But with trade waste bylaws, I also have introduced a trade waste discharge plan. So I think it's going to be more a case of some will stay in the bylaw and some will move to the plan, but we'll work through that.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Helen.
Yes, thank you. I was on the brothel bylaws in 2010 to 2013, but then we had another hearing in 2019 to 2022. And I'm trying to get the date, but Keith Davidson was the chair. So I remember him being the chairperson, and I was on that panel too. So I'm not sure that the 213 is correct. I think it's been updated. We made marginal changes only.
Yes, it would have been. And this is a convention we're also trying to tidy up as we work our way through them. Some of our bylaws, it's kind of depended on the person reviewing them and their preferences, but some of them have kept the year when they were made, and then if you look at the detail, it will say this was reviewed and
it's been reviewed in 2019.
But that 2013 definitely would have had a review done once, because otherwise it would be well up.
Let's say it was 2020. Then wouldn't that go down as 2020 rather, and then you don't have to do it till 2030?
Yes, and that's a change that we're actually looking to make sure every time we review, we're putting that current year in the title, because then it makes it very clear just from the title when it was last reviewed.
So if you know it's 2020, say, would you have to have it there at all? It's been a relatively well managed bylaw as much as possible, because it doesn't affect street walkers. So
I would need to check the exact date on that one of the last review, but sometimes we do. So we won't schedule them direct on 10 years, because it does take sort of that 12 to 18 months to work through the process, and sometimes we bring them forward a little bit to help manage other ones. I will check the date on that one.
Would you? Yes, thank you.
Given this work program, I think any opportunity that we have
and we don't, I mean, it was quite hard. The first time we had 1,000 status. And then next time we had about 5. Yes. So I'm not sure it has to be reviewed.
I will check.
We don't have to.
But
it was reviewed in 2018. came into
Yeah.
force 21st of December. 28.
Okay, so if it's 2018,
Yeah.
we need to do it by 28.
I think it was 2019 to 220.
Right.
Davidson was,
Yeah.
We'll,
there, isn't it? Oh, you've got it.
we'll need to check now
Yes.
and, we'll just check those dates.
Yes,
Right,
just check.
so
Thank you.
We can, now we'll have Philip on the alcohol restrictions in public places.
Thank you. So the purpose of this bit of the presentation then is to give you some information on alcohol control bylaws generally. Our current alcohol control bylaw, the alcohol restrictions in public places bylaw 2018. The public places in this community board area in which the bylaw applies, what's involved in the review and how the board can provide input to that. There's quite a bit of ground to cover. So I'll highlight the three main things that I would like to make sure that you take away from this bit of the presentation. That is that alcohol control bylaws have got a specific and limited purpose, and that is to control the consumption and possession of alcohol in public places. The process for making these bylaws is set out in legislation, and that requires that we meet certain criteria before we can put those restrictions in place. And the third point is that we would like to hear from the board about the appropriateness of the current bylaw and the restrictions in this community board area, and whether we should be considering amending, reviewing, or potentially adding any new alcohol ban areas. So, as I mentioned, alcohol control bylaws have got a specific and limited purpose that's set out in the Local Government Act. We can use them to prohibit or regulate the consumption and possession of alcohol in public places, but what we can't use them for is to deal directly with other potentially related behaviours. So some of those listed on the slide there are ones that we cannot use the bylaw directly to address. When we make a new alcohol control bylaw, the law requires that we meet criteria, including that there is evidence that the area to which the bylaw is intended to apply, and I'm quoting now from the legislation, that that area has experienced a high level of crime or disorder that can be shown to have been caused or made worse by alcohol consumption in the area. So from now on, when I refer to evidence, that's really what I'm talking about. It's that evidence of crime or disorder that can be shown to have been caused or made worse by drinking in the area. Similarly, if we want to continue an existing ban area or replace one with a similar ban, then we must be satisfied that the pre-bylaw levels of crime and disorder that were there would be likely to return or to arise if the area did not have the restrictions in place because they're not continued or they're not replaced after the review. Jenna mentioned only the police can enforce these particular bylaws. It's not something council officers can do. And so for this and other reasons, it's important that we work closely with the police as we carry out this review. So our alcohol control bylaw was made in November 2018. We've had an alcohol control bylaw and before that area-specific liquor bans for many years. But this most recent iteration of that current bylaw was made in November 2018, which means we've got until November 2028 to review it, which may seem like a little way away, but there is a considerable amount of work to do because we will need to assess our existing alcohol ban areas, and there are 17 of those across the district, as well as the bylaw generally. When I talk about public places, it's probably worth clarifying that that alcohol control bylaws allow councils to prohibit or regulate control alcohol in a public place, which may include land that is not council-owned land, but is open to the public. So it could be any place then that's open or being used by the public, such as a non-council-owned car park, for instance. But the legislation excludes or doesn't allow us to include licensed premises and private residences when it comes to places where the bylaw and the restrictions apply. So these, and I won't expect everybody to look at the very minute detail on this map, But these are the places where the alcohol ban areas are located across our district. You'll see the dots are colour coded, and these reflect different settings used for different alcohol ban areas. Some of them apply at all times, 24/7. Those are the ones in the red dots. Some apply only at night. Those are the ones in the black dots. Some apply on specific times, days, or dates. Those are in green dots, and they include sports fields designated for rugby league matches, which I've put in a category there rather than showing them all individually. There are too many to fit on the map.
Crosby Park.
The next slides that I'll show you are the alcohol ban areas in this community board area. So there's the Addington permanent alcohol ban area. This applies only on one day of the year. That's on Cup Day. And when that is in place, it is the restrictions apply from 9 AM till 10 PM. The Riccarton Island permanent alcohol ban is an interesting one. I find it interesting. No one else would probably, but it's interesting because it covers 2 community board areas. So part of it will also be in the Waimero, Fendleton, Waimeri, community board area. But the areas within this community board area that it covers include Middleton Park. There's a reserve that I've mentioned, Shand Crescent Reserve, but also shopping centre car park and footpaths and roads in that red area. That applies at 24 hours, 7 days a week. Also, another ban that applies only on one day is the ban area that is in place for Riccarton Racecourse, and that applies on New Zealand. There are also, as I mentioned earlier, rugby league playing fields where the restrictions apply for certain times when the fields are in use for rugby league. And I've listed the ones that are in this community board on the slide. I won't read them all out, but they're there for the reference if you wish to look at them. So we're reviewing this bylaw. It's going to take a little while because of the need to look at the case for continuing or potentially amending or even removing the existing alcohol ban areas across the district. As Jenna mentioned, there's a process involved in reviewing bylaws generally. The Act here also includes some procedures and criteria specifically for noting and reviewing alcohol control bylaws. And I referred to that earlier in terms of having to be satisfied that there is evidence of a high level of crime or disorder that can be shown to have been caused or made worse by drinking in the area. So we will be, we also need to look, at the appropriateness of the bylaw and any restrictions, and we need to consider whether they are justified as a reasonable limitation on people's rights and freedoms. So those are criteria that the Act requires we take into, that we assess proposals against. So we would like to, in this forum, but also potentially if it's something to consider, if you wanted to consider it later and provide something in writing, we'd be looking to understand the community board's views on the existing alcohol ban areas in the community board area, whether they should be continued unamended or amended or even removed if they're not considered to be fulfilling the need they were originally set out to address, as well as whether there are any other places in this community board area which could be considered for potential new alcohol ban areas. So our high-level timeline for this review is, at the moment, we're aiming to complete the review around the start of 2028, with consultation taking place next year. In the meantime, as I mentioned, we're looking for that initial feedback from the board. We're still at quite an early stage in the review. We're gathering the evidence and looking at the case for the bylaw continuing and also the specific alcohol ban areas. we're not in a position to set out proposals to you yet, but we do plan to provide community boards with a memo outlining our developing thinking at a later point. And at that stage, community boards may wish to request a follow-up session or set out their views in writing. But in any case, boards will have the opportunity to make submissions on the proposals when we go out to consultation. And just as final thought, just to remember that any proposals that we consider will need to be assessed against those criteria. So there's it's not necessarily a case of nominating an area and it's definitely being added to the bylaw. So there is one thing that I will just add, and that is that in addition to just quickly go back to this slide here, I forgot to mention there are some alcohol ban areas where the restrictions apply for 24 hours when a nominated large-scale event is held in that location. There aren't any that fall within this community board area, but there are 3 places in the district where if there is a large-scale event being held there, the council can nominate, at staff level, can nominate it to be a large-scale event alcohol ban area. That means that a ban is in place in that area for 24 hours on the day of the event. And if we give notice publicly, we also have the ability to empower the police to have immediate power of search for the duration of that ban. So sorry, I should have mentioned that at that point. But that is all from me, and very happy to take some questions.
All right. Thank you, Philip. I've got questions from Cody, Mark, and Helen.
Okay.
Cody, please.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you for taking the time to come and speak to us today. I don't know the full sort of historical context of maybe why we've had some of these. I can kind of assume. Are you able to send us through maybe some of like the rationale for each of the areas? Have you got that?
When we review the bylaw, we have to provide the council with a bylaw review report which sets out the case for adding or making amendments to the bylaws. So that it provides a fairly it's a good starting point. So I can certainly send the previous review report round, which will give you a breakdown of why it was the case. And generally that will relate to police data on crime and disorder in the area. Also, when we're looking at if we're looking at potentially not continuing an existing set of restrictions in an area, we're looking at removing them. Then we would need to consider. Sorry, no, apologies. If we're looking to continue an existing set of restrictions, we need to enable the council to consider what would happen, or the view that it would be likely that pre-bylaw levels of crime and disorder would return if the restrictions were not there. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's essentially looking at it's looking at the counterfactual essentially of what would happen if we didn't do this, which is something that stats can only. There aren't necessarily going to be stats to back that up.
Sure.
And so it's useful to hear from community boards to understand whether, in your view, from having your ear to the ground, whether you think it's likely that were we not to have those restrictions there, probably would occur.
Yeah, thank you. And just one more. So I'm not saying it has been an issue, but let's say that it was, for example, we have an event every year in Waikola Park, Hello Hornby. If we, for whatever reason, needed to put one on for like a 1 day because it is a large event, is it something you have the capability to do now or not? Is it only in those 3 locations that you could do that?
For the large scale event alcohol ban areas, there are I think there are certain thresholds that need to be met in terms of, I think it's the number of people expected to be there, but also I think there has to have been the same process of establishing the case for having restrictions in that area. So it would need to be, we would need to consider, is there evidence of a high level of crime and disorder related to alcohol consumption in the area to be able to put in place restrictions, even if it's because you have some that are in place on one day of the year only.
Yeah.
So but we still have to go through that same process.
Is that process like 3 years, or is it kind of something that could happen within a short time frame?
It can happen in between reviews.
Yeah.
The specific time it takes to do, I couldn't say. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Jenna. But...
Yeah, I was actually just going to add as well as those large scale event areas. So there would be an option to add a new location if there is obviously the evidence to support it.
Yeah.
There's also an avenue of a temporary alcohol ban that can be put in by a decision of council. That's usually for exceptional circumstances.
Yeah. Okay. I get
that would be an avenue as long as there is the evidence there to support it, and that process. I'm trying to think. Last time we did one, it may have been around the sort of 3 month mark.
Yep.
So it does need to be a wee way out. It's not something that can happen, in 2 weeks.
And would involve consultation as well.
Yeah.
Public consultation. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's just for my own understanding.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cody. I've got Mark, Helen, Sarah, and then Joseph. Mark, please.
Very good. I'm intrigued at the rugby league fields. That must be something historic, I'm imagining.
I didn't take part in the last review, but my understanding was that the rugby league organisers requested that there be alcohol bans in place, and I think my understanding as well is that the fields to which they apply can change over depending on where games are going to be held. So they vary, but the bylaw allows for that. So, but yeah, my understanding is that it was made at the request, and this will be in that review report that we send, I'm sure. My understanding is that the request was made by league, and that's where that originated.
And therefore, thinking about league versus rugby versus football, there's obviously been no request from the other bodies, so therefore no consideration.
We will go out to consultation at this for this review, so it's possible that we hear similar requests, but I've not had anything within the recent time frame anyway from anyone else.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mark. Got Helen.
Thank you.
Sarah.
I was there in 2009 when the bylaw came in, and it came from a working party of police, students, council, and probably in university, and it came in because the residents around the university were getting fed up, basically. So the working party, I was on that, and then it went to the bylaw. So, and it's obviously been reviewed since. So I'd be very hesitant to take away that area around university unless there's some evidence that things have gone away. We had a particular issue with university and their bar there finishing at 12, I think, and then the students migrating down to the Bush Inn, which was then a pub, and then the serious thing that happened there was actually a rape outside, but it was minor vandalism on the way there and on the way back. So I think it's just needed as a safeguard. It's not ideal. I would like it stronger, actually, but it's apparently all we can do, and it has quietened things down. I was getting 5 calls a week from residents back in 2009. Now, I hardly get a murmur. I think there's been a social shift as well on drinking, but I just think it's important to just keep it. I wouldn't extend it. Fenelton wanted to lose their bit. I'm fine with that, but I'd like to keep it.
So I think we can include that in our submission, the board submission.
Yes, I'm just giving some background to code. Yes, came from the community in a working party.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And
I'll head away.
Joseph. Thank you, Helen.
I'm sorry to leave you.
I'm just curious. So people cannot consume or possess alcohol. So I understand consuming is very visible. When you say possession, like what does that actually mean? I mean, if somebody goes and gets their groceries and is walking home versus a student that, hey, that's
Have a bag rather than
open alcoholic.
this is a bylaw that's made under the Local Government Act, and the Local Government Act refers to possession, bringing into and consuming alcohol in public places. There are exemptions for alcohol that is in a sealed container. So if you've got a bag with a bottle of wine in that's not been opened, and you're walking from the supermarket to your house, that is not something that is going to be a breach of the bylaw.
What if it's a student that's drunk, that's walking with it? Like, I mean,
If it, well,
it just seems quite loose and hard to sort of enforce and
the
understand.
the issue is whether somebody is consuming it or if they have an open container. Then there is specific reference in the bylaw to whether it's in the bylaw or the legislation. I need to check, but there is a specific reference to open containers, and I think it's that distinction. And if it's open and you're holding it, then that is a different thing to if it's sealed and it is in your bag and you're walking through. The bylaw wouldn't stop somebody from being intoxicated in a public place. It addresses consuming and possession of alcohol. So and that's the limited scope that the primary legislation under which it's made allows us to deal with.
And so my understanding from this is that it's more of a culture shift rather than a enforcement. Let's make sure that everyone's doing the right thing by this bylaw. Would that be right? Because it is hard to enforce, I assume.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, because it can only be enforced by police. It's really it relies on that police presence to enforce. So yes, a lot of it is encouragement of this area is an alcohol ban area, and hoping that message gets through to not be drinking on the streets in those areas. And then where there are issues, that is up to police to attend and undertake the enforcement.
Yeah, and we don't have the statistics for the two most recent for the past 2 years, but when we were undertaking the development of the local alcohol policy, we looked at the crime statistics for alcohol ban breaches roughly by alcohol ban area. There are reasons why we couldn't go specifically by ban area. That's to do with how the data is mapped, but that's suffice to say, it's roughly where the ban areas are that we've got statistics for the period 2020 to 2023. We will be getting more up-to-date stuff as part of this work, but it is interesting to look at the statistics. They are relatively, they can be quite uneven, but when you compare different ban areas with each other, Riccarton Island has got one of the highest. In fact, that and the Central City have the highest number of breaches over that 4-year period. But then that may not capture times when something has been tipped away without it being notified. So, and I think generally speaking, if my understanding is that it is generally better to not escalate something to a situation that involves some form of enforcement if it can just be dealt with informally without having to get to that stage. And that I don't know whether that will always be counted in the statistics as well, but one of the reasons why it's useful to hear from community boards about what the actual lived experience of people is, because that may help to complete the picture.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Sarah. Joseph.
Thanks, Philip. And just following on from that one, I guess. So you've mentioned lived experience, crime statistics, and police data. How are those available, and are they made available to the community board specifically? And are there other forms of evidence that can be used in this process?
The police data we rely on getting from the police service. We at the moment are using the data that was published in the research report for our local alcohol policy. That's because we've got it, but we will be submitting a request to fill the gaps, and there will need to be a publication of our findings when we go to the council with proposals for the updated bylaw. If that's how council wishes to proceed, they could, in theory, decide to not proceed with a replacement bylaw, but assuming that they do go with it, we would need a research report to back that up. But if the board wished to get statistics in the meantime, then that would be something to go to the police for, I think, in the first instance, because they are the holders as the enforcement agency. They are the people who collect the statistics for it. But we will be getting those. So that's and it does take time. I think they get lots of similar sorts of requests. So we have to we're just making sure we're going with the right questions so that we only have to go once. Ideally, it does take a while to get them.
And just with that data as well, the way some of it is reported, if we were to get like a map that pinpointed incidences, often that data can't be released publicly because it can pinpoint where things have happened. So occasionally there will be some data that needs to be public excluded information.
And just one more question. So what other forms of evidence would be usable?
I think we will be looking to get the information that we hear from you as representing the community in the area. And when we go to consultation, if there are submissions that are that would be relevant and appropriate to take into consideration as evidence for or against there being a high level of crime and disorder. And I think that's the thing. The Act requires us to look at whether there is a high level, or whether there would be, without the restrictions, a high level of crime and disorder relating to alcohol consumption in the area. So that kind of narrows the scope to what we can look at, really. Whereas with the local alcohol policy, for example, we were looking at alcohol-related harm across a fairly broad range of disabilities. This is narrower. This is more about crime and disorder. We also will need to look at whether the proposals are justifiable from a human rights perspective, Bill of Rights perspective, sorry, and that they're proportionate. So we'll be considering information that helps us to make those assessments as well.
Okay, thank you both.
Right, I've just got one last question. Looking at your high-level timeline, 2027, you've got the consultation or the opportunity for community boards to make submissions. Is this the only time that the community board can provide feedback, or is there an early feedback time that we can provide, or are you going to come back to the community board to provide us with further information about each area, what's happening in each area, so we can also understand the evidence that's happening?
Yeah, at the moment, because I haven't got a set of proposals yet to be able to say this is what we're thinking of doing. I haven't penciled in a definite return date to come and update you all, because it may be that some community boards will have lots of alcohol ban areas and an interest in shaping those, and others may have only a few that apply for maybe one day of the year. So it may not be necessary to go in person to give a similar update. So what I'm planning to do is to give an update in the form of a memo to community boards, at which point, if the boards wish to have another session like this, but looking at the actual information, we can certainly come in. And like I said, some may not need that, because in some community board areas, we have a very small number of ban areas, and that might not be something that they feel is necessary. Others will have more. And so this community board area, for instance, may wish to discuss what we're considering in more detail at that stage. So that would be, I'm hoping sooner rather than later, but I just need to continue looking at the evidence first to be able to get a sense of what that tells us we should be doing.
And will those evidences be shared with us?
I think at a high level, it will be at this point, at the point where we're able to set out our proposals. But the more detailed research report will be put together at the stage where we go out to consultation as part of that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else has any questions? No? None? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think that ends our info session workshop for the day.
Great.
Is the money. All right. Thanks, Jen.